Welcome to Willing Warriors, episode number 37. This episode, we're calling it Classical Christian Education. Maybe it's a term some of you are familiar with, maybe it's a term you're not familiar with. We did have an earlier episode, episode number 5, where we talked about education is really a means of discipleship. Now we want to go a little bit deeper and provide a little context of why we want to encourage you to think towards what we call a classical Christian education. We will define some terms as we go. So this is not meant to be exhaustive. It's meant at best to be an introductory to the concept. To start with, God's word and the way God has created us, consider this, right? He tells us to get knowledge, get understanding, and then get wisdom. So in the way in which children learn, or all of us learn, right? We start earliest in our age and we're just getting the facts. And then we start to see the connections. And then we want to do something with this. So we'll try to explain how we have to learn every subject this kind of way, and how God has created little ones from our earliest years to fit into this mode. And what you'll see is instead of working against the grain, let's work with the grain, the way God has created us. So maybe, dear, you want to start by talking to us about the knowledge phase and what can happen then.
Well, I confess that's probably my favorite phase or stage is the knowledge stage. And I've often heard in educational circles, as children ages like from birth to 9 years old, they're like little sponges. They can just grab so much information. If you don't believe me, put a little commercial with a little jingle. I know I can do some from my childhood, that it just gets stuck in there. They have an incredible skill to memorize for the most part. They have learned 26 characters in sequence, the alphabet. They've learned how to speak. They can recognize colors, numbers, shapes, songs, random facts, trivia. Some children, after they learn to read, they just love to read those, books of trivia. And a lot of these things, they're probably not likely to forget, throughout their lifetime. But since their mind is prone to memorization, this is the ideal time. Some people would scoff, but this is what we do. Historical timelines. We sing a timeline from beginning of creation to current day. It's not exhaustive. It does not have every political, but it's just meant to be a pegboard. So when you are studying art or history or they already have a little peg that they can oh, that's the medieval period, and they can sort of put it in there. Names of states and capitals, names of, famous composers, body parts, math facts. This is where you just drill. So I have little ones. We're involved in a co-op that learns different math. They're doing skip counting. So they're really learning multiplication. And then they also learn how do you find the area of a square? How do you find the area of a circle? And you're like, what? And they can tell you how to do it, but they don't know why they're doing it at this point. That's not the purpose. You just get as many little facts and important, not fluffy stuff all the time. But the other reason I really like this stage is because you can make it fun. Learning can and should be fun at this point in their life, because you're just trying to fill their head with knowledge.
Yeah, one of the classic ways that they use is teach them with a song. And as my wife mentioned, you run across an aged person, and their mind maybe isn't as sharp as what they were, but they can remember things from their childhood.
Yeah.
And so the first stage was get knowledge, and we say God has made us this way where we can just absorb it from 0 to 9, right? When are you ever going to learn another language as perfectly as you did from the first few years of your life, right? So now the next phase, let's just call it 10 to 14. a lot of different names. We've been using the term first get knowledge. Some people will also call this the grammar phase. Then we say get understanding. This could be the logic or the pert phase. So what happens there? You tell children something, and now they've switched gears, and they're asking questions. Why? 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 And before, in the grammar phase or the knowledge phase, they were just taking it and running with it. Now they're asking why. They're trying, and initially this sounds like they think they're being disrespectful. They're not. Hopefully they're not, right? They're trying to connect the dots and to see how this and this and this. They're doing cause and effect. Now they are ready to learn higher order math. Now they're ready to learn why is this formula the area of a circle? Why does this work, right? So they're not only are they ready to learn where they've learned the flow of history, now they can learn why did this happen after this, after this, after this. How are these things connected? Where they learn the body parts, now they can start to learn the body functions about what happens if we do this and this and this happens. They are ready to learn formal logic. They can learn to write, not just write down copybook write, but write their first sentences, their first short stories. Now they're reading some literature with greater understanding, and they're starting to ask how this happened or that happened. What they're doing now is they're beginning to learn to see that this is what they should be learning to see if we're teaching them well. This is God's world. He owns it all. He's created it. He sustains it. He holds it together. He's driving it. And so there's 1,000 points of intersection where God's got his hands. They can learn about the evaporation of seawater, how this produces clouds, how it carries inland and drops snow or rain, and that goes back and back to the water. They can learn the process of photosynthesis. They can see how God works. I want to make a note here. In an earlier episode, we talked about education. We're applying this law. Don't cook a kid, a baby goat, in its mother's milk. A mother's milk should be life-giving. And if you cook a kid in it, that which was meant to be life-giving, you murder the little ones. Don't make education a blunt force to beat your children. Make it lovely, enjoyable, and beautiful. And here's the point. How many of those textbooks from school that we had did you just absolutely love? How many did you keep? The answer is none, right? So we're not overtly against textbooks. We're just saying use them sparingly and live life, explore. If you can, put them away. If you're going to the beach, get out books and study the beach. If you're going to a town, before you get there, get the books and understand what happened in this town. When you get to that town, go find those historic markers and say, oh, look, this is this battle and that happened here, right? Make it an adventure. Read some novels that cover a place and enjoy that. And this is how God has made us to learn. Textbooks, I suppose, have their place, but they're the milk that cook the kid, and don't let that happen. And by the way, this especially happens with boys or young men, right? They despise it, right? So tailor this to them and make it an exploration and adventure. And I think if you've had little boys, young men that have, oh, I hate this. If it's an adventure, I think their eyes will turn. So far we've talked about the get knowledge. Then we said understanding all the connections. Now, it's time for the wisdom phase.
The wisdom.
So what happens there?
So wisdom, we generally put in between ages 14 through, adulthood. And in fact, they are young adults at this point. I stress the word young, but they are not only starting to make the connections, but now they're trying to figure out how they can use that. And I agree with you. I mean, through our own personal experience, learning still requires it requires effort, And like you were saying, some of the boys and such, they don't want to be still or they don't want to do this or that. And it can be a challenge. It truly can. It can require a lot of prayer and fasting sometimes, but it is an adventure. It can't always be fun. There is work involved, especially when you start getting into that middle stage understanding, like you said, asking the questions and putting that together. So for the wisdom, perhaps they've learned math and they've learned, various things. So how can we apply the math that we've learned? We might learn how to balance a checkbook or do accounting or other things, ways to apply that. A lot of times because of the age, because of hormones, because of, I'm an adult now and I can sort of think for myself, which is sometimes a good thing, but they still need to be guided generally, given counsel. A lot of them want to make a mark for themselves. They, want to do something profound, or, if they've been learning music, maybe they want to write their own piece or something. Because God is artistic and his word is often poetic. So, but I think all of us can either bring up true life examples, or you can definitely see them out in the world if you on any kind of media source. Without the proper encouragement, guidance, and discipline, this can come out in a lot of what we might see as rebellious ways, with body piercings, metallic hair, graffiti, or even join a commune. I don't know, just almost more like I want to search the truth for myself, but perhaps not do it in the wisest of ways. So they are desiring to master something and to make a statement. And a lot of times those things I just mentioned definitely make a statement. But especially as Christians, do we want to say, is it make a statement in a glorious way? Is it beautiful? Is it lovely? Is it truth? So one way to do these might be to take up acting, compose a music score, build some fine cabinetry. You can use those math skills, doing angles and all of these other things, measuring. Some that love to be in the kitchen, create brand new recipes or variants of it. Write poetry, write a novel. So if you think about many of the great musicians, a lot of those, especially if you look in, back in the 1700s, they were sort of at their peak in their 20s, and but the idea is to master a subject, one does have to apply oneself. Sometimes you get people that are just really gifted and just seems to come out of nowhere, but most of us have to work at it. So we want to, as parents, encourage them in the hard work, to explore different venues of using that knowledge, that understanding, and now making something out of it, whether it's knitting, cooking, building, programming, landscaping, whatever it is.
Yeah, so as they're doing that, right, they are showing themselves to be image bearers of our God. He was creative. They want to be creative. And now the only question is, will they be creative to be a blessing to others, or to tear it down, right? And in our own culture, what do we see? Let's tear it down, and there's no blessing there. So we've been using this term, classical Christian education. So why classical? Where does that come from? Well, what we just described, this classical approach to education, has been around for a long time, where it was gained. The rubrics were to gain knowledge, learn the grammar of a subject, come to understand it, and then apply wisdom. So this has been around. It's served the Greeks, served others quite well. The other reason we want to use that term is we want to use that term to refer to look to those things that have withstood the test of time. Something that's been around. Scripture tells us to think on those things which are honorable, noble, and good. So we want to say, okay, if it's been around for, if it's been around for a while, it's passed the test of time. What were our forefathers thinking? Why did they like it? Let me give you an example, right? Familiar with music, you'll know Pachelbel's Canon in D, one of my favorite songs. It's been around for a long time. Now, let's just pick something, right? I have no idea of any of the titles of her song, but take a Taylor Swift song. Will people be listening to Taylor Swift's music 200-300 years from now? Well, Pachelbel's passed the test of time. I have my doubts whether Taylor Swift's music's going to make it. Excuse me. The other one is let's take another one. Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has been around, I don't know the exact date now, but let's say 80, 90 years. And it's passed some amount of test of time. Go down to your grocery store, pick one of those paperback novels that are there at the checkout line. They'll probably be gone next year and forgotten. So there's something about passing the test of time we should check to see, is this good, honorable, noble? Take architecture, another area. Go to Europe, look at those grand cathedrals and the years and decades that it took to build those. And then look at the architecture of a mobile home. And so now what we're doing is, I'm not saying you can't live in a mobile home. I'm saying that which we should prize and that which we should honor and that which we should hold up, that which we should look to say, this is changing history. This is changing the trajectory. Think about it this way. What do you want to hold up as your highest example? What would you like your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren seeing as great, honorable, and noble? Well, meditate on those things. Look to those things. Watch those things. Too often, Christians have found themselves in a ghetto. What do I mean by this? We found ourselves saying, if it is Christian art, I'm following it. So they go down to I call it the Jesus junk store, and they buy a Jesus pencil. They buy something that was done by a Christian, and so we should buy it. And often what it is, it's a cheap imitation of what the world has done. And so instead of trying to have sub-art, instead of copying what the world's done, let's do the best art. And let me give you a couple examples. C.S. Lewis wrote some wonderful works, and they've shown up in movies, they've shown up in books, and people who are Christian love them, and people who aren't Christian still love them. Handel's The Messiah. It's a great work, but it's played by those who serve Christ and those who don't serve Christ. Seek to do that which is so good that whether you're a Christian or not, people will migrate towards it. Get off the ghetto. And what you're going to do to get off the ghetto of following the world, following it fast, is understand we live in a world that's plastic and pop, consumerism. So the art that's made today is high volume, it's short, it's sweet, it's like a Doritos chip, and we take it and it gives us some pleasure, right? And we have to learn to appreciate those things that take a little bit more time that you have to work for. Right? So we honor and see as the highest form of art is that which is easily digestible, the pop art that's there today, gone tomorrow. This is like a McDonald's hamburger. If you want to have a McDonald's hamburger, do it, enjoy. But this isn't your highest form of culinary preparation, right? It might be a filet mignon with wrapped in bacon and blue cheese crumbled on it. I don't know, but whatever it is, set the high mark for you, for your family. Think about those things which are honorable, noble, and that's what makes it classic, that will pass the test of time. So often with classical education, we also hear about Latin or other languages. Why in the world does this get worked in?
Yeah, our students always ask the same question. And I confess, I do too. It does have a place. A lot of our language and other languages, that is the root, and that's where a lot of our words have been formed and where they come from, the derivatives of it. So Your first language, like I learned American English when I was a baby because that's what they talked to me, that's what they read to me, that's what I learned to read. And a lot of times, the language that you first learn and that you're most familiar with, you do still have to learn grammar rules, especially when you're writing and stuff. But a lot of times, especially if you've read a lot, you have a good idea of, the grammar already. But learning a second language, you learn the rules and nuances of your own language. I remember some of our older children that when they went off to college, when they really studied Latin, they're like, wow, I think I just learned English grammar too. So, but people say, why do you have to study that? That's a dead language. Well, exactly for that purpose. So if you hear a word, a lot of times, if you can figure out what the base of the word is, then you can almost figure out, oh, this means this or that or whatever. So I think like Eskimos, they have how many different words for snow, I think. But they all might have a little bit of a different nuance or a different meaning. And the Greeks, if you read in God's Word, had in the Bible, there's at least 3 or 4 different forms of the word love. But they all have, one might mean brotherly love. One might mean more of eros, like an erotic love, or not erotic, but you know what I mean. A love. And what is the other? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Well, anyway. Agape love. Yep. So they're various words, but again, they don't necessarily all mean, maybe they might have the same root word, but a variant of the definition. But anyway, so Mr. Whear assures me that, and other friends as well, that learning Latin is like strength training for your mind. And it does. It works one's mind.
So we've talked about classical education, and we also call it Christian. What makes it Christian? Well, first off, let's just make sure this is crystal clear. Jesus is Lord of all, every square inch of this world. And as we raise our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, they need to know that He is Lord of all. Let's make it really specific. So first off, we break this neutrality myth. There is no teaching of anything, of truth, that can be done without God. He is the creator of all. He's the Lord of history. He's the Lord of algebra, philosophy, astronomy, physics. In fact, not only is He the Lord of all, but to be efficient, what we've done is we've divided all these subjects up as though they're not connected. But they are absolutely connected, and we have to see this. This world of which we live in, that God has created, is one Lord, one Creator, and it's all interconnected. And so we have to be sure to learn the subjects in an interconnected way. So, why do we have math? Well, He has created the world in an orderly way. Math reflects that order. How is He the God of history? He has been driving this world from the garden to the celestial city in the book of Revelation. And we see He's driving it all the way there. Right in the center of that history is the cross. God is working, and He's told us to go disciple all the world, every single nation. So He is the Lord of history. He's raising up the weak. He's bringing down the proud. Science. What is science? God has created this world in a wonderful way. And we can dig into science and know that, from the color of the rainbows to the scent of a flower, He is glorious. So embrace creation. Give Him the glory. And now what we want to do is, my wife and I have not been trained in this way. But our goal is, once you understand, if you want to learn a subject, even if you're old and memorization is hard, you can still do it. Go learn the grammar, get knowledge about the fact, start understanding how this and this are connected, and then go display that. Be a creator. Do something new, and show forth wisdom. Embrace life. I want to share an experience of a dear friend of mine who has embraced this. He hasn't been classically trained either, as far as I know. But what has he done? He wanted to go learn karate, so he learned karate. Then he went and learned, he said, I want to learn how to build guitars. So he learned, got with masters and learned all the details and learned how to build guitars. Now what was next? I want to learn how to play the guitars. Then he got into falconry. He learned all there was about hawks and falcons and owls, and he helped them, any of them that were that become damaged, to get them restored and released to nature. So he got himself immensely involved. That wasn't enough. He got into restoring cars. Along the way, he was into horses. But he's gotten into each subject, and he learned the basic facts. He talked to other people. He understood how these things are connected. Then he became an expert on it. He's a lifetime learner. He's embracing, he's loving life. This is what God has called us to do. He's not called us to be amused in front of the internet, in front of the computer, and just surf our life away. He's calling us to live. So, learn to be a lifetime learner. Gain knowledge, gain understanding, the second stage, put it all together, display God's glory, learn to love those things which are honorable, noble. So maybe it's for you is learning how to work in wood, learning to do coming up with a brand new recipe, painting a picture, writing a story, leaving your family an heirloom, putting on a play. I don't know what it is, but you and all of us, God has made in His image. He's a creator. We too are creators. Explore those things. Learn to love and enjoy life. This is what it means. This is the thought process behind classical Christian education. There are plenty of resources to learn about them, and how we would love to encourage you to raise and train your children in this mode. We found it to be so beneficial for us. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to a couple things we'd encourage you to do. If you like this material, subscribe to the channel. You can also go to christchurchowensboro.com. You can find our webpage there, and you can find all of our materials. And until next time, thank you for joining us.